The sun cast a golden glow over New York City as Ethan Westbrook, the 20-year-old heir to one of the most powerful family empires in the country, stared out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. The city's skyline shimmered in the distance, but the weight on his chest was heavy. Success, power, luxury, these were all at his fingertips, yet he felt a strange emptiness, a sense of loneliness that the high society women surrounding him couldn't fill. His office was filled with the city's elite, each of them impeccably dressed, their eyes lingering on him with hope and perhaps something more. Ethan was used to the attention, the lavish dinners, the parties, the whispers in every corner of Manhattan. It was all part of the territory, but none of it ever touched him. Victoria, the daughter of a prominent real estate mogul, leaned in, flashing a smile that could melt steel. "Dinner this weekend, Ethan? I know just a place with a view of the city that's like no other," she purred, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. He nodded politely, but felt his gaze drifting to the far side of the room. There, among the crowd of women in their designer gowns, Olivia stood, quiet, graceful, and entirely out of place. She wasn't one of them. She didn't seek the wealth, the attention, or the power that his world revolved around. She was simply herself. The humbleness in her presence struck him in ways he couldn't describe. Olivia, the maid at one of his family's most prestigious hotels, had captured his attention in a way none of the other women ever could. There was something raw about her, something unrefined and yet captivating. Her beauty wasn't the kind sculpted by wealth or status, but something deeper, more genuine. He couldn't put a finger on it, but he didn't need to. He just knew. He caught her looking up at him once, her eyes meeting his across the room. His heart still for a moment, a pulse of something unfamiliar coursing through him. The women around him chattered, vying for his attention, but his mind was elsewhere. They didn't see it. They couldn't understand what had taken root inside him. Something unspoken, a force that made his entire being ache. The voices of the women faded into background as he stood from his desk. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate their attention. It was just that it felt hollow now. He had grown used to the luxury, to the beauty of the women around him, their polished smiles and perfect lives, but none of it mattered. Not anymore. "Mr. Westbrook, could I speak with you for a moment?" Olivia's voice broke through his thoughts like a gentle breeze, her tone respectful, yet hesitant. She stood by the door, dressed in her simple maid's uniform, her hands clasped in front of her. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he masked his reaction with a calm smile. "Of course, Olivia. What can I do for you?" She stepped forward, the softness of her presence almost surreal against the sharp, tailored elegance of the room. "I was just about to tidy up in here," she said, looking down at the floor as though she didn't want to disturb the conversation, her cheeks flushing slightly as her eyes briefly met his. The women around him continued their chatter, oblivious to the quiet tension building in the air. Ethan's gaze didn't leave Olivia. He couldn't explain it, but everything about her made the noise of the world around him fade. The perfume of the heiresses, the laughter, the politeness. It all fell silent when Olivia was near. "Thank you," Ethan said softly, his voice carrying a deeper weight. He watched her quietly as she moved around the room, her steps so graceful, yet so unaware of the way she had ensnared him completely. He had seen her countless times before, her hair neatly pulled back, her hands moving expertly around the space. But today was different. His eyes followed her as she adjusted a picture frame on the wall, her fingers brushing lightly over the smooth surface. He wanted to reach out and stop her, to pull her into his world, but he didn't. There were too many barriers, too many complications. What would his family say? What would the world think? And yet, when she turned to face him again, her eyes meeting his with that quiet vulnerability, he knew that he couldn't keep pretending he didn't feel what he felt. This wasn't about wealth or status. It wasn't about titles or social expectations. This was real, and it scared him. Olivia. Ethan's voice broke the silence, sounding rougher than he intended. She froze, her eyes locking onto his, and for a moment, the room felt too small. The breath between them was thick with something unspoken, something neither of them had dared to acknowledge until now. Her body stiffened, as though preparing for something that might be too much to handle. "Mr. Westbrook," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is there something else I can do for you?" It took everything in Ethan not to reach for her then, not to pull her into the space between them and kiss the worry out of her eyes. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he took a slow step forward. "Olivia, The words died on his lips. He couldn't make them come out. He couldn't admit that, despite all the wealth, all the control he held in the world, what he truly wanted was her. He wanted her, so much that it terrified him. "Ethan?" she asked quietly, her gaze flickering nervously as she stood still, waiting for him to speak. But it wasn't the words he needed now. It was action. It was a chance to finally bridge the distance between them, to take a risk. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering near her arm, just an inch from contact. And there it was, the spark, the heat, the yearning. What would you do if you found yourself torn between two worlds? When love feels impossible, do you fight for it, or do you let it go? Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if someone like Ethan chose you over everything he was meant to have? Welcome to Hup Stories. Let us know in the comments section where you are watching from. I know you want to find out what happened next, but kindly hit the subscribe button before we move, as it helps me bring you even more heartfelt stories. The silence between Ethan and Olivia lingered, almost suffocating in its intensity. His hand remained suspended in the air, as if uncertain whether to close the distance between them. Olivia, too, seemed caught in some invisible battle, her expression a mixture of confusion and longing. The world outside seemed distant now, blurred by the magnetic pull between them. Ethan knew this was dangerous. His mind screamed at him to retreat, to maintain control he had always held. But his heart, the part of him that had always been hidden beneath the polished exterior of the Westbrook legacy, wasn't willing to let go. Not of Olivia. Not of this feeling that surged inside him. This need he couldn't ignore. The wealth, the legacy, the pressure of his family's expectations, they all felt like chains, holding him back from the one thing that made him feel alive. Olivia. She was everything he hadn't known he needed. She wasn't afraid of him. Not like the others. The heiresses, with their well-manicured lives and perfect smiles, had always seen him as an opportunity, a stepping stone to more power, more wealth. But Olivia saw him as just another person. She wasn't dazzled by his name, his fortune, or the empire his family had built, and that, more than anything, made her irresistible. As the evening wore on, Ethan tried to focus on the meeting at hand, but every time he glanced at Olivia, it was like a wave of heat washed over him. Her quiet demeanor, the way she moved through the room with such grace, and yet there was something in her eyes that told him she, too, was struggling with the pull between them. His family had expectations, grand ones. His father had mapped out a future for him that involved power, control, and influence. Marrying an heiress was part of the plan, but nothing in that blueprint had ever felt as real, as visceral, as the way Olivia made him feel. His father would never approve. His world would never accept it. But in that moment, Ethan didn't care. He knew what he felt, and he wasn't willing to deny it anymore. He wanted her, and the thought of living a life without her, without the possibility of something real, made him feel like he was suffocating. He couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep lying to himself. He had to tell her. He had to make her understand how much she meant to him. As Olivia walked past him, her body stiff, avoiding his gaze, Ethan couldn't stand it any longer. "Olivia!" he called out softly, his voice low with an edge of desperation. She paused, her back still to him. He saw the way her shoulders tensed, the way her body reacted to his words, and for a moment he thought she might turn around and walk away. But she didn't. She turned, slowly, her eyes hesitant as they met his. "I can't stop thinking about you," Ethan said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I know this is complicated, but I can't pretend anymore." Her breath caught, and for a moment they stood in silence, each of them caught in the weight of the moment. Olivia's eyes flickered, as if she were trying to process his words, trying to find a way to make sense of what he was saying. "But I'm just a maid, Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're the heir to an empire. Your life, it's not mine. I don't fit in your world." Ethan's heart clenched at the raw vulnerability in her voice. The pain in her words hit him harder than anything he had ever felt, but he wouldn't back down. "I don't care about that," he said, stepping closer to her, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't care about the world they want me to be a part of. I care about you. I've never felt this way about anyone before, Olivia." She looked at him, her eyes full of fear and longing, but also something else, something he couldn't quite name. "What if this is just a dream, Ethan?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we can't make it work?" Ethan reached out, cupping her face gently with his hands. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers, his breath mingling with hers. "Then let's make it work. Together, we can figure this out. Olivia, just don't walk away from me." Her eyes closed as she leaned into him, her hands resting against his chest, her body trembling slightly. The kiss they shared then was not just one of passion. It was filled with every unspoken word, every longing, every desire that had been building between them. It was slow, deep, tender, everything Ethan had been craving. As their lips parted, Olivia pulled back just slightly, her eyes still closed. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice heavy with emotion, "I'm scared." "I know," he murmured, "but we don't have to be scared together." The room around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the sound of their hearts, beating in synchrony. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt something real, something that wasn't built on expectations, on plans, on legacy. This was just about them. But as much as he wanted to surrender to the moment, he knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. They were from two different worlds, and breaking down the walls between them would take more than just love. It would take courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to fight for what they had found in each other. And Ethan Westbrook was ready to fight. The following days passed in a haze for Olivia. The weight of Ethan's confession, the way his touch still lingered on her skin, consumed her thoughts. She couldn't concentrate on her duties. Her mind kept returning to the moments they had shared, the warmth of his embrace, the softness of his lips as they brushed against hers. She had never felt anything so powerful, so real, but the reality of their worlds, so different, so starkly divided, kept crashing back into her thoughts like waves on a shore, eroding her resolve. Ethan, the billionaire heir, the CEO of an empire, could never belong with someone like her. She was nothing but a maid in his world of wealth and privilege. How could they ever make this work? Yet, despite the doubts that gnawed at her, there was one undeniable truth that remained. She wanted him. She wanted him with a ferocity that scared her. And it wasn't just about desire. It was about connection. As she passed the grand lobby of the hotel one afternoon, her eyes sought him out. There he was, standing by the grand staircase, his sharp suit fitting him perfectly, his demeanor cool and collected. But when his gaze met hers, everything around them seemed to disappear. There was no one else in the room. Only him. Only her. Olivia's heart raced as she walked toward him, her footsteps slower than usual, the distance between them feeling impossibly far despite the short span of the room. Ethan was watching her, his eyes locked onto hers, his usual calm composure slipping as she drew nearer. The tension between them was palpable. She could feel the electricity in the air, a current pulling them together despite all the barriers between them. When she finally stood before him, the space between them seemed to close in, leaving nothing but the sound of their breaths. "Olivia," Ethan said, his voice low, almost hushed. "I've been thinking about you." "About us?" She looked up at him, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. "Ethan, we can't keep doing this," she whispered, though her body betrayed her. She wanted this, wanted him, but the fear, the overwhelming uncertainty, clouded her mind. "It's not just about what we want. It's about everything else. The world, my place in it, your place in it." Ethan reached out then, his fingers gently brushing against her arm, sending a shiver through her. He took a slow step closer, his breath mingling with hers as he cupped her cheek. "I don't care about the world, Olivia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I care about you. I want you, and I'm not going to let fear stop me from having you." The moment his words sank in, something inside Olivia snapped. All the fears, the doubts, the hesitations, they were still there, lurking in the back of her mind. But in that moment, in the warmth of his touch, in the rawness of his sincerity, she couldn't hold back anymore. Her lips met his with a passion that had been building for what felt like a lifetime. It was a kiss that was not just about desire, but about everything they hadn't said, about everything they were afraid to say. Ethan pulled her closer, his hands finding their way to her waist, drawing her against him as if they were two magnets, unable to resist the pull. Her hands trembled as they rested against his chest, feeling the rapid thud of his heart under her fingertips. His kiss deepened, more urgent now, as if he couldn't wait any longer, as if he had waited for this moment forever. His hand slid to her back, gently coaxing her closer still, his body pressing into hers with a hunger that was impossible to ignore. Olivia's breath quickened, and for the first time, she allowed herself to give in completely. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She wasn't just a woman who cleaned up after his parties, after his meetings, after his life. She was his. And in this moment, Ethan was hers. His lips moved from hers, trailing down her neck, his hands exploring her back, caressing her softly but insistently. Every touch, every movement was like a spark that ignited something deep within her. She responded eagerly, her hands sliding up his chest, feeling the firmness of his muscles beneath the fabric of his shirt. She wanted him, all of him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to take it. Ethan's lips returned to hers, this time with more urgency, more desperation. His hand slid down to her waist, and without breaking the kiss, he gently guided her to the private room in the back of the hotel, where they could be alone, away from the watchful eyes of the world. There, in the dimly lit room, their clothes seemed to disappear. Their kisses grew more passionate, more frantic, as if they couldn't get enough of each other. Olivia's hand slid under his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin, the way his body tensed beneath her touch. He groaned softly into her mouth as her hands roamed lower, tracing the lines of his abdomen, the muscles that pulsed with life beneath her fingertips. She felt alive, like she had never felt before. Her whole body was on fire with desire, and it wasn't just about the physical touch. It was about everything that came with it, the emotional connection, the understanding, the yearning. Ethan wasn't just a man to her. He was everything she had ever dreamed of, everything she never thought she could have. But even in the heat of their passion, Olivia couldn't ignore the voice in the back of her mind. She didn't belong in his world. She didn't belong in this moment. She was nothing more than a simple maid. And Ethan Westbrook, the man who could have anyone, who had everything, deserved more than someone like her. Her fingers tangled in his hair as he kissed her deeply, his hands exploring every inch of her. But as the reality of the situation set in, she pulled back, her breath coming in short gasps. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with both longing and fear. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What happens now?" Ethan's eyes softened as he looked down at her, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He cupped her face gently, his touch tender despite the desire still burning between them. "We make it work," he said softly. "We take it one step at a time." Ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far, have you hit the subscribe button? Please do so if you haven't. We want to grow our YouTube family to a milestone of 100,000 subscribers, and even count matters. Like and give the video some hype points if you have enjoyed the story so far. Now let's move on. The days following their passionate encounter were filled with a silence neither of them could escape. Ethan's thoughts were consumed by Olivia, the woman he couldn't stop wanting, but also the one he couldn't quite bring himself to bring into his world. The world that was dominated by expectations, rules, and a future that didn't have room for someone like her. As much as he wanted to hold her close and make her his, he couldn't ignore the fear that had crept into his heart. What would his family think? The Westbrook name was built on power, on perfection, and a match between him and a maid, no matter how exceptional she was, could never be accepted. Would Olivia even want to be a part of his world? Would she be willing to fight for them when every part of their relationship was fraught with obstacles? He spent his nights tossing and turning, unable to shake the image of her from his mind. She had awakened something in him, something real, something that went beyond the physical. It was her presence that had sparked something deep inside him, a yearning for a life that wasn't confined to the glittering world he had inherited. But every time he tried to reach out, to call her, to bring her closer, the weight of their worlds felt insurmountable. He wanted her, but he feared he couldn't offer her the life she deserved. She deserved more than to be the object of his desire, the secret that could never see the light of day. Olivia, for her part, felt as though she was living in a dream she couldn't wake from. The moments with Ethan had been intense, but now that reality had settled back in, she couldn't ignore the fear that gnawed at her. She had never imagined a life like this. She was a simple maid, a woman who had always worked hard for what she had, never expecting anything beyond what life had given her. But Ethan had shown her a world she didn't know she wanted, a love that was deeper than anything she could have ever imagined. But there was something inside her that hesitated, something that warned her to stay away from this love. It wasn't just about Ethan's family and their expectations. It was about her own worth, her own fears. Could she really fit into his world? Could she be the woman he needed, or was she just a fleeting fantasy, a distraction for him? Nothing more? The guilt lingered. She didn't want to be his secret, didn't want to be someone he had to hide away. But when she looked at him, when he held her, kissed her, she couldn't help but feel like she was the only woman in the world who mattered to him, the only one who saw him for who he really was, not the heir to fortune, but just a man, vulnerable, searching for something real. The emotional battle raged inside her as she walked through the hotel corridors. She had heard whispers of the heiresses who had come and gone, the ones who tried to win Ethan's heart, but none of them had his attention for long. The women in the city could see the connection between him and Olivia, and it unsettled them. They didn't understand what he saw in her, what she saw in him. It wasn't until one afternoon, when she was in the back kitchen, clearing away trays, that Ethan appeared again. His eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, everything else seemed to fade. The bustling noise of the kitchen, the clattering dishes, even the watchful eyes of the other staff. They all disappeared as he moved toward her. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice carrying the weight of all the emotions he hadn't been able to express. His eyes were dark with longing. "Can we talk?" She nodded, her heart skipping a beat at the sight of him so close. The heat between them was unmistakable, but so was the uncertainty. What was he asking of her? What did this mean? But before she could say anything, Ethan was pulling her into a quiet corner, away from prying eyes. "I can't stay away from you," Ethan confessed, his breath shallow. "Every part of me wants to be with you, but I'm scared, Olivia, scared that what we have can't survive the world I come from." Olivia swallowed hard, her eyes searching his. She wanted to tell him that it didn't matter, that they could make it work. She wanted to say that she didn't need anything but him, but her fear held her back. She couldn't help but think about the life they couldn't have. "I don't belong in your world," she whispered. "I don't want to be the woman who's just a secret. I need more than that, Ethan. I need to know I'm enough for you, not just in stolen moments, but in the open, in the life you lead." Ethan reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing the soft curve of her jaw. "You are more than enough. You're everything I never knew I needed." But the weight of his family's expectations, the crushing reality of the life he was supposed to live, loomed over them. It was clear they both wanted more, but did they have the strength to fight for it? "Let's not hide anymore," Ethan said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I want you to be by my side. Always. No matter the cost." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she looked at him, her heart aching with a mixture of love and fear. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this was real, but her own insecurities, her doubts, gnawed at her. "I'm scared, Ethan. What if we can't make it work?" she whispered. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if to reassure both of them. "We'll make it work, Olivia. Together." The following days felt like a dream and a nightmare wrapped into one for Olivia. The moments she'd share with Ethan, the raw honesty and the passion. They were both a lifeline and a trap. She had never imagined she would fall into something so intense, something so real. But the weight of their worlds, so vastly different, still loomed over her, casting long shadows across their connection. Each time she saw him, she was reminded of everything she couldn't have. Ethan was the heir to an empire, and she was just a maid in his family's hotel. She had never been taught to dream of a life like his. She had learned to keep her head down, to do her work, to remain invisible. But he had changed that, changed everything. He had shown her a side of herself she never thought she could be. Still, doubts lingered. Could they really make this work? Could love overcome the deep-rooted barriers of class and expectation? Ethan's family would never accept her. The social elite, the women who had been chasing Ethan for years, how would they react when they found out he had chosen someone like her? It would be a scandal, and she would be nothing more than a pawn in their game. Yet, as much as Olivia tried to push Ethan away, the pull between them was undeniable. His presence lingered with her in every moment, even when they were apart. She found herself thinking about him constantly, about his smile, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person who mattered in the world. And that made the pain of their separation feel unbearable. One evening, she found herself standing in front of the hotel's grand mirror, adjusting her uniform. She stared at her reflection, her fingers trembling slightly as she fixed the collar of her dress. The world she had known, the life she had lived, was slipping away from her. And though she didn't know if she was ready for what was to come, she couldn't deny the yearning in her heart. Olivia's thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, his eyes dark with intent, his expression serious. His presence, as always, filled the room with an undeniable intensity. But today, there was something different in the air. He wasn't just here to speak, to flirt, or to be polite. He was here to claim something that neither of them could escape. "Olivia," Ethan said, his voice low and steady, "I need to talk to you." She swallowed hard, but the words she had been holding on to felt heavy in her chest. "Ethan!" This isn't the right time. I can't. Stop, he interrupted, his gaze intense. I've made up my mind. I'm not going to let you walk away from this. Her pulse quickened as he stepped forward, closing the distance between them. And before she could protest, he reached for her, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that sent a shiver through her. His eyes softened as he searched her expression, the raw emotion in them undeniable. I want you, Olivia. I want this you, with every part of me, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with longing. You don't need to be afraid of what we have. I don't care what they say, what my family thinks. I just want you, only you. She could feel the heat radiating from his body as he drew her closer. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, everything else faded. The weight of her doubts, her fears, the barriers between them. They all vanished in the presence of the love that burned between them. I don't belong in your world, Olivia said again, but this time, her voice lacked the certainty it had carried before. I don't fit in with everything you have. Ethan's hand slid from her face to the back of her neck, his fingers tracing the delicate line of her skin. Olivia, you belong with me, he said, his words laced with a quiet desperation. I don't want to live in this world without you. I can't pretend anymore. I know what I feel, and it's you. His lips captured hers then, soft and deep, and everything inside Olivia trembled. There was no more hesitation, no more doubts. In this kiss, she felt the weight of every unspoken word, every shared secret. She could feel Ethan's hands moving lower, caressing her body, and in that moment, she surrendered to the passion that had been building between them. As their kiss deepened, the reality of the situation still lingered in the back of Olivia's mind. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop the way her body responded to him, to the heat of his touch, to the need that had consumed them both. The emotions, the passion, the desire, everything came crashing down around her in a whirlwind of feeling. Ethan gently pulled back, his chest heaving with breathless anticipation. Olivia, he whispered, his voice hoarse, I don't care if this world tries to tear us apart. I'll fight for you. I'll fight for us. She could feel the weight of his words, and something inside her shifted. The fear, the uncertainty. It wasn't gone, but it was smaller now, diminished by the certainty in Ethan's eyes. I'm scared, Ethan, Olivia admitted, her voice trembling. But I want you. I don't know how this is going to work, but I can't pretend I don't want you. Ethan's lips found hers again, this time with a newfound urgency. His hands moved over her body with a tenderness that made Olivia's heart race, every part of her responding to him in ways she hadn't known were possible. For the first time, Olivia let go of her fears. She let herself fall into him, into the connection that had bloomed between them in secret. There was no going back now. And as they came together, their bodies moving in synchrony, all that mattered was this moment, this love, this connection. In Ethan's arms, Olivia finally found a place where she truly belonged. The days that followed were not without their challenges, but they were filled with something neither Ethan nor Olivia had ever known. True intimacy, not just physical but emotional. Every time their eyes met, they understood each other without needing to speak. The unspoken bond between them was undeniable, and every moment spent apart only deepened their longing. Ethan's world, the one built on money, power, and expectations, slowly began to feel less important. The man he had once been, distant, detached, focused on the empire he would inherit, began to fade, replaced by the man who was willing to fight for the woman who had stolen his heart. For Olivia, every day was a delicate dance between the reality of her life as a maid and the heady freedom that came with being loved by someone who saw her as his equal. But it wasn't just about their private moments of passion or the whispered promises in the night. It was the way Ethan supported her, how he cared for her without asking anything in return. It was the way Olivia grounded him, reminded him of what truly mattered, pulling him back from the brink of a world he never truly wanted to live in. Yet, despite their growing connection, the reality of her situation couldn't be ignored forever. The whispers of his family, the judgment of the society around them, still haunted every decision they made. But Ethan had made a choice. His love for Olivia surpassed the expectations of his family, his business, and his legacy. One evening, after a long day, they found themselves alone in the quiet of Ethan's penthouse. The city light stretched endlessly in front of them, the view a reminder of the empire Ethan had inherited. But for once, the view didn't matter. It was Olivia who mattered. Olivia stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself as she stared out at the bustling city. Ethan approached her from behind, his presence familiar and comforting. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice gentle. She turned, a small smile curving her lips as her gaze met his. "I'm thinking about everything we've been through, everything we'll face together." Ethan stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently brush a lock of hair from her face. "Whatever we face, Olivia, we face it together. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I don't care about anything except you." She felt the heat of his words sink into her heart. The doubt, the fear, everything that had once held her back, began to fade. She was no longer the maid. She was the woman Ethan had chosen, and that was enough. "I love you," she whispered, her voice filled with a sincerity that had only just come to the surface. Ethan's hand cupped her face, his thumb grazing her cheek as his lips gently met hers. "I love you too, Olivia," he murmured against her lips. "And no matter what happens, I will never stop fighting for you." The kiss deepened, slow and tender, as they both surrendered to the love that had transformed their lives. The world outside, the expectations, the judgments, none of it mattered anymore. There was only them, only this moment of complete connection, of mutual love and trust. For the first time, Olivia felt truly free. Ethan had given her the gift of acceptance, of love without limits. And in return, she had given him the one thing he had never truly had, someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he represented. As they held each other in the quiet of the night, the future seemed full of promise. Together, they would face whatever came their way, knowing that the strength of their love was enough to overcome any obstacle. What would you do if the love you always dreamed was right in front of you? Would you fight for it, or would you let fear take control? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to join the journey of love, trust, and the bonds that hold us together. Thank you for watching. Tell us where you are watching from the comments section. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and give the video some hype points if you love the story.